Good morning. It's great to be on with you.
Thanks. I appreciate some of your time. There was a word that was thrown around a lot yesterday, and I feel like it's one of those political words that sometimes gets used when we talk about bellwether. It's going to be a bellwether for the 2026 midterms, talking about the results of some of the elections. I'm not 100% sure that I'm on board with that. We got a lot of time between now and November of 2026. What do the elections of Democrat governors in New Jersey and Virginia and the passage of Prop 50 by such a wide margin and Mamdani in New York City as mayor, what do those say to you about 2026 in the midterms?
First, I think that we need to acknowledge that these are blue states. If you look at the data of the way that movers have left Virginia and come into Virginia, Virginia has become more blue. Of course, we don't have voter registration data, but we do have movers data in the state of Virginia and the Commonwealth. Of course, in the state of New Jersey, we have voter registration by party affiliation. As of August 2025, we knew that Democrats had a delta of 160,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans, again, in the state of New Jersey. We also know California, New York City, very deep blue. So going into these elections, we knew they were uphill battles. We knew that they were elections that were going to be tough, that we likely were not going to win. Of course, we don't want to be completely dismissive. There are lessons to be learned about the elections from Tuesday. And that is that affordability is top of mind for voters. If you look at what President Trump had been doing, he had been truthing about energy prices in New Jersey for weeks prior to the elections. Now, unfortunately, the candidates were not focused on those messages. The Democrats were, and I think that that's why you saw those victories. I do believe that that is the lesson learned as we head into these midterms, as we're talking to our Republican candidates looking towards November.
To me, the outcome that was most disappointing had nothing to do with governors or mayors or props on the ballots, but the people of Virginia choosing to put Jay Jones into office after the text messages that were revealed. How did that happen? I mean, I know there was no denunciation per se beyond just, oh, yes, he shouldn't have said that from Democrat officials, from congressional people to more local people. But ultimately, the Virginia people, the people of the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia said, we're okay with putting this guy in office. Well, why did that happen? How did that happen?
I think you're exactly right. What Jay Jones said was vile. It was disgusting. It should not have happened, and it should have been denounced in the strongest terms by Democrats across the country and certainly up and down the ticket in Virginia. One of the interesting things that happened timing-wise is votes had already been there were votes already being cast in Virginia when those text messages became public. So there was already ballots being cast, already votes in the bank for Jay Jones. The other interesting thing about it, and it's something that I was not expecting, I maybe was expecting drop off in the race after those text messages came to light. Drop off in the ticket, voters who go out, vote for the top of the ticket, vote for the governor, but maybe will not vote for the attorney general. There were actually ticket splitters in a time of very hyper-partisan politics where you would think a voter would go out and vote straight down the ticket Democrat, straight down the ticket Republican. We saw a lot of ticket splitting because of the vile comments that Jay Jones made. And so there was a huge difference in the vote getting between Abigail Spanberger at the top of the ticket and Jay Jones. But you're absolutely right. It was disappointing to see a win by Jay Jones after those horrific comments.
A lot of conversation right now about the nuclear option in the Senate, talking about the removal of the filibuster. The president has been adamant that it is time to do that so that this administration can get legislation passed. I thought the way he framed his argument with senators yesterday at that Republican Senate breakfast was fascinating. Let's do so much good and get so much legislation passed that we're unbeatable. I kind of felt like that's the way that he was framing it. Senators, though, so very reticent to go down that road of eliminating the filibuster, and all of them pointing to, yeah, but what could the next guy do if we get rid of this now? What's the temperature in D.C., especially within the RNC, about this idea of eliminating the filibuster that the president so badly seems to want to do right now?
those conversations are happening between the president and, of course, senators and Senate leadership. The reality is that both things are true. You do have to worry about the abuse of power that Democrats have demonstrated. We saw it certainly during the Biden administration. We know that if and when the pendulum swings back, they can abuse those powers again. It is something that, from my understanding, senators are having serious discussions about. I also understand President Trump's frustration. He is dealing with Democrats who forget the mandate that he received in November when he won every single battleground state, the popular vote, won the House and won the Senate. And they just oppose. The Trump derangement syndrome has absolutely rotted their brains, and they have nothing to offer the American people. They just want to oppose everything that President Trump does. He's a doer. He's a builder. He's a businessman. So I understand his frustration when he says, I just want to get things done. He was on pace, 8 peace accords, shutting down the border, deporting illegal immigrants, pulling the levers of the economy. And then suddenly Democrats shut the government down. They have voted down a clean continuing resolution. For your listeners, just means we're going to fund the government at the levels we've previously funded it while we have negotiations about how we fund the government moving forward. Democrats are unwilling to do that. They want to hold the American people hostage. The whip of the Democrats said that this suffering, the American people's suffering, is going to be Democrats' leverage. And that frustrates the president. So I know those conversations are being very seriously had.
14 times now, senators have voted not to pass that clean resolution, that clean continuing resolution that would reopen the government. So what does that conversation look like? We saw the letter yesterday from Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer demanding an audience with the president for bipartisan talks, which is kind of rich in and of itself, to reopen the government. Will the president and will House and Senate leadership hold firm on, yes, we are absolutely willing to reopen it, but we're not going to do it staring down the barrel of a gun. We're not going to negotiate before the government reopens?
I never want to get ahead of the president or speak on his behalf. But the reality is, but the reality is, it's really tough when Democrats don't want to negotiate in good faith, when they don't want to do the thing that, as you mentioned, they have done 14 times before. Vote for a clean continuing resolution. Fund the government at the levels that it's previously been funded so that we don't have to have this government shutdown while we are having negotiations about future appropriations. I think it's really a shame on the Democrats' part. But I know that the president and his team are having conversations about how we can end this government shutdown, how we can get back to work for the American people. He's just a brilliant man. When the military was not going to receive their paychecks, he found a way to get it done. He always has something that he's working on, something up his sleeve. I know that top of mind for him, again, is reopening this government, getting the economy working, and again, those affordability issues. If you're listening to what's coming out of the White House in the last few weeks and certainly in the last 24 hours, it's all about affordability. It's what the president campaigned on. It's what he is going to deliver.
Well, and it feels like for midterms, that better be the message that that candidates across the Republican ticket, the GOP ticket, go with as well. Affordability and safety, those were big winners just 10 months ago.
I think that that's exactly right. And as you dissect the messaging from the campaigns leading up to Tuesday, you had a candidate in Winsome Earl-Sears who talked a lot about transgender ideology. And what we were doing is we weren't listening to voters. Voters were saying that it wasn't just the economy that was top of mind. Again, it was those affordability issues. Even in the president's successful 2024 campaign, when the president was talking about the left's transgender ideology, he was talking about misplaced resources. Kamala Harris wanted to fund sex change surgeries for individuals in prison instead of helping American taxpayer dollars. So again, we really need to make sure as Republicans that we don't have a conclusion we're trying to back into, and that we are following the data and we are really listening to what voters want. And I know that that's what this president and our candidates are really good at.
Danielle Alvarez, Senior Advisor with the RNC. Thanks so much for your time. Let's do this again.
Thank you for having me.